everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Oh, has it been a crazy week, D? Oh my gosh, how are you? Good morning.
I'm doing pretty good. I was already kind of thinking of this as basically the Elon and Twitter podcast because there's so much to cover around that.
I know. So we're only going to do two topics today, but let's start off with the main one. So, full transparency, we actually had to re-record this podcast because I made a mistake on my end yesterday. We usually record on Thursdays, and the recording didn't really turn out very well. And so Demetrius and I are re-recording it, but with actually a new topic in addition to what's going on with Elon and Twitter. So let's start there. D, so what are your thoughts on everything that's going on? Do you want to kind of give everyone a quick summary of what happened over the last 7 days?
Sure. So, sometime last week, Elon Musk decided to buy 9% of Twitter, which makes him the single largest shareholder, kind of surpassing Jack Dorsey at 2%, and kind of just throwing everything into a bit of a disarray. So, since that time, he has been sued by other shareholders for failing to disclose that he was going to buy over 5%. There's an SEC requirement that he's supposed to disclose shareholders since it's something that could significantly affect the stock price. And he also turned down a board seat. There was a widespread expectation that, as the largest shareholder, that he was going to be a board member, and he turned it down.
Yeah, so this is an interesting kind of take here because you and I were discussing this offline, and basically when he turned down the board seat, when you and I were chatting, we said, "Hey, like, if he turned down that board seat, maybe it's because he wants to move from the restrictive 14% total ownership, which would happen if you had a board seat and you were kind of officially like part of that team, versus not having a board seat. He could do some sort of hostile takeover or make an offer for Twitter." So we were talking about this, I think, on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? No, it was Thursday
It
morning,
was Thursday
basically.
morning. Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday morning, he gave an offer to Brett Taylor, who is the chairman of the board, who's also a co-CEO of Salesforce, for, let's see, $43 billion. Looks like all cash to buy Twitter at $54 a share. Current market price was about $46.80 when the offer was made. But his offer came with some stipulations. One was that this is his final offer, meaning like he's making the offer, you take it or reject it. But if it's rejected, he may just divest his current holdings, which also is kind of not cool in the sense that, that could create a major drop in the share price for current shareholders. Now, since that time, something else has happened that I wanted to bring up. So Mark Cuban made a post about this because he was following this obviously closely. And he said, "My conclusion is Elon Musk is fucking with the SEC. He's filing with the SEC, allows him to say he wants to take the company private for $54.20, which has the 420 in it because he likes 420, versus am considering taking Tesla private at 420, funding secured. The price will go up, his shares will get sold, profit is made, and the SEC will be like, WTF, what just happened?" So I went back and looked at a interview that he did with 60 Minutes in 2018, and basically he had said, "I have no respect for the SEC at all. I have respect for the justice system, but not the SEC in the way that things are kind of handled." And he's been kind of having a fight with them ever since. Another thing actually happened, which was this morning. I haven't even had a chance to talk to you, D, about this, which was one of the major shareholders, I believe a Saudi prince, had posted and said that he rejects the offer of Elon Musk's uh, request to purchase due to the fact he thinks that there is much more upside and growth opportunity with Twitter, and he would hope that the board would reject that offer. And he's a major shareholder also in the company. So a lot of backlash. To me, it doesn't look at all like this is going to happen. Um, but the offer was placed. Now, I did some digging even deeper and found that there is kind of rumor on the street that because he made this offer and now they're considering it, that a lot of other companies are now thinking about potentially making an offer, including hedge funds, on buying Twitter. But those companies probably are talking to a lot of lawyers and figuring out how to prevent monopolies from occurring and SEC violations and things like that in order to provide a clean, probably bank backed offer to purchase Twitter. So I think if the writing's on the wall, I think within the next 6 to 12 months, I think Twitter is going to get purchased by somebody.
Well, we'll see. I look at Twitter and I don't see a growth company. I see a platform that's in decline. I don't think they've been able to manage social. I think social is one of the most difficult things to get a grip on right now.
Oh yeah,
And Twitter is actually one of the easier ones, I think, to kind of use automation in order to rein things in, but they just haven't had the will to do so. And I think that if Elon Musk became an owner, it would basically become something more like Parler or something like that, where a
yeah,
lot of fewer people are going to be interested in engaging in that way. My knee jerk reaction when I first heard the news about the acquisition offer was just like Mark Cuban was like, all right, well he's saying he wants to buy it at 54. It's going to make the price go up close to 54, and then he can sell off his stock and dump it, and he'll make his profit based on what his purchase price was.
yeah.
But looking at it, the stock market hasn't really responded to
No, it
the offer.
hasn't.
It's actually like somewhat down. So I think there's a lot of investors who are kind of looking at this in the same way that Mark Cuban has, which is this is not a legitimate offer. This is Elon just screwing with everybody again.
Yeah. So I will
And
I will tell you this. The market doesn't like volatility, meaning the average investor isn't looking for volatility. They're looking for consistent and progressive growth, you know what I mean, in a company, and so their stuff can do well over time. Who likes volatility? Hedge funds. Who likes volatility? Like day traders. And so this volatility may look exciting to like hedge funds, but it doesn't look good to the average investor. And this is probably the reason why you see the stock price going down. They don't want this kind of stuff going on. What they want to see is innovation. What they want to see is the numbers, a number of users go up. They want to see subscription services or whatever it is to bring more revenue in. They're looking for growth in the company, not volatility. And so um, I don't think people are super stoked about kind of what's going on here, but I do feel like the writing is on the wall and someone's going to buy Twitter. Twitter's They've been trying to sell this company for years. You know, you remember
mhm.
Salesforce considered purchasing it. I think that was disclosed on one of the talks that was done, I think, on Pivot or something. And then also, I think Bob Iger mentioned that it was on the options table, you know, with Disney purchasing it, but it was just too toxic, basically, for Disney and its brand. So it's not like no one has ever wanted to sell this company. I think they've been wanting to sell it for a long time because it's a really hard company to run.
Yeah, and I think that what the new CEO Parag Agrawal has done so far have been steps in the right direction, but I think it's really difficult. I think that Twitter is a bit of an outrage machine,
Yeah.
and it's in order to change that to something that where people actually feel good about getting on Twitter and or any platform and taking a look at things and like walk away and having a good feeling for the rest of the day is like once the brand is kind of associated with that, it's really hard to walk it back. But for the stock, I think a lot of people are looking at the fact that it was what a month ago that the stock price was at like $34 a share, and
Yep.
now Elon is trying to convince everybody it's worth $54 a share or 420. And you look at the financials, and they're not profitable. So it's really hard to justify that for a company that's as old as Twitter is.
Hmm.
So I could see a reason why Elon Musk would do this, and it's not. It doesn't appear to be that it has the best intentions, to be honest.
Hmm.
He will say things about his commitment to free speech, but at the same time, he does everything he can to silence journalists and employees that are saying things that he doesn't want them to say. So, a story, I think this is kind of relevant. A story broke a few days ago in the LA Times about Twitter bots that were essentially targeting Tesla stock and trying to basically market it through Twitter posts as the stock of the future, which is highly illegal stock manipulation stuff. Which Elon has never had an issue with stock manipulation. So there is a huge question as to whether or not these Tesla Twitter bots were developed by him or not, and it kind of makes me wonder if he were to buy it, it would be primarily so he could, you know, have a platform that he can use for stock manipulation purposes. And the platform is protected by Section 230
Hmm.
from SEC because they're not considered a true publisher.
Correct. And you know what? At the end of the day, I feel like it's becoming a marketing machine, right? Is that
Yeah.
before it was about people connecting and that kind of stuff. I think the true intention early on, right? And now it's become this thing where the companies that want to buy it are like, "Hey, this is our opportunity to market to people." But every time a company starts to move in that direction where it becomes like a marketing machine, fewer and fewer people end up on it, and it becomes a kind of a crappy platform and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say from an experience standpoint. It's not a great experience most days when I engage with it, except for the local community stuff that I use it for. Updates from police, updates from our different Parks and Rec classes that we take, updates from school, little things like that, just to make sure that everything gets out to the community quickly. But kind of beyond that, it becomes quite toxic and actually makes you kind of bummed out after reading a
Yeah.
lot of the posts that are put on there. And so I don't know what his intentions are. He did go last night on TED and gave a talk where he was talking about Tesla and SpaceX, and they asked him all about this stuff. And he kept coming back to, I don't really care about the financials. All I care about is free speech. And I think that this is a great opportunity to give everyone within reason an opportunity to have a place to speak out around the world. um, and that's just what it is. And then if you go back to his 2018 interview, he calls it the Wild West. All anything goes in the Wild
Yeah.
West, right? So I think his thinking around it is like, this is just this Wild West old school IRC chat room, and I don't understand
Hmm.
why we're putting so many boundaries around it.
Well, here's the thing. Also, is that there's just unpacking kind of that statement is number one. Uh, from a free speech perspective, you have to keep in mind that Twitter as a company and the employees and the leadership that are involved have their own speech, and they have a right to determine what kind of speech they're associated with.
Yep.
It's as though from a platform perspective, when it comes to what speech is allowed on their platform, it's kind of like what you're allowing other people to put on your lawn. If you imagine the platform is like your property, is your land, right? You
Uh-huh.
wouldn't want just anybody to be able to put whatever political statements they want to on signs on your lawn, right? So that's part
Correct.
of the regulation because that is so gets associated with you and your house. We had talked to people who work for companies like Twitter and Facebook, and they are really uncomfortable with some of the political and uh, social things that get posted on there, and they feel uncomfortable with it. And I think that if this turns private, one of the negative things that could happen is that a lot of the employees, which Twitter kind of has a difficult time getting employees as it is, because the stock's not really looking like it's growing, and a lot of employee compensation happens through stock RSUs, basically stock options and grants that employees get that ends up being a major part of their compensation.
Yep.
If it goes private, that means you can't really be compensated in that way because there's no way for you to exercise those. There's no way to sell them because they're not available on the secondary market. They're private. And also, there's the aspect of like, all right, well, now you're going to be associated with a platform in which hate speech and other things are just going to be willy nilly going on the platform. And things could be going to a whole new level of toxic. And you're, I don't think that a lot of employees are going to want to stick around for that. I think they have a huge problem with talent acquisition.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is the same troubles and issues that Facebook had or is currently having right now, right? And so,
Yeah.
only time will tell. But we'll give an update again on this probably next week
Yeah.
and maybe even the week after because
Well,
a lot's
one
kind of
last thing
happening.
I'd say before we wrap this up is that in
Yeah.
order for Elon to buy Twitter, so just walking through the logistics of it. So in order for
Yep.
him to tender a $43 billion payment, he would either need to liquidate around $70 million in equity in across his other companies. So that could be Tesla stock, that could be SpaceX stock, could be something else. Uh, if he does that, then he has to pay taxes, which I assume is going to be at the 25% capital gains taxes. So that's 25% of those billions of dollars gone in taxes right off the bat, and then he can spend the other $43 billion to take Twitter private. The way around that, which he would probably do, is he secures funding through a bank and puts up those shares as collateral. So that means that he could make the acquisition without liquidating any collateral up front and or uh, liquidating any equity up front, and he could probably write off the interest on that. The difficult part of that is you have to convince the banks why a stock that was worth $33 a share a month ago is now worth $54 a share, even though the rest of the market says it's worth $45 a share.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you buy a house. If you pay more for a house than it's technically valued at, the way the bank handles that is you have to cover the extra cost in cash.
Yeah.
So if you go out and buy a house and you say you make an offer on a house and you say I'm going to give you $1 million for this house, and the valuation on the house is 900,000, and the bank looks at it and says no, this house is worth 900, but your offer was accepted at 1 million, you have to cover the offset, which is the 100,000 in cash. So
Which the banks might bend the rules for Elon.
I think that they would, yeah, because they'd look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, SpaceX is probably worth 10 times of Tesla in the future, and all that kind of stuff." So there's ways to kind of look at that and stuff. But no, it's interesting. I'm glad you kind of broke that down. I love the topic. I don't like all the volatility around it. It's kind of slightly annoying in that sense, but I feel like it's really interesting because this might be the last shakedown, so to speak, before Twitter gets acquired by a different company and gets kind of wrapped in um,
Yeah,
to something
we'll
bigger.
see.
I mean, I could see like Google buying them. I could see
I
like any of those companies
I
and
could, I
trying.
would be
And
surprised.
well,
I,
here I'm going to throw
honestly,
the
I would be
big.
surprised.
I know, but let me throw the big try. Trying to control it, trying to get it right. I feel like a lot of people want to take on this task. I don't know why, but a lot of them do. They're like, I think I can fix Twitter. I think I can control Twitter. You see it all the time. It's kind of an arrogance thing. But like, because of
Sure.
the fact that it has marketing capability and it has a lot of users on it, which any platform you build is it's hard to get users on it, right? um, I think everybody wants to try, and someone's going to try. D, mark my words. Remember this: it's on the podcast. It's recorded. I was right that he was going to make a full offer for it, and now I'm telling you, I don't think he's going to buy it, but it'll be sold within the next 12 months.
I will predict the opposite and
Okay.
say that nobody. So we can compare our predictions down the line. I will say that nobody acquires it. I will say that a lot of people talk about it, and I think that after. I think Elon Musk will look at this and say, "All right, well, yeah, I'm not going to leverage my other companies that are worth a lot more in order to get this company that's on the decline and isn't profitable."
Yeah.
Um, and he will, he'll sell for whatever he can sell for, and then he'll just move on and do other things. And then other people will come in and say, well, obviously that 54 or $46 billion was crazy. We'll acquire you for $20 billion, and then that
Exactly.
won't go through. And then over time, somebody else will come along. I mean, Twitter. How long has Twitter been around? Since 16 years. So this is a 16-year-old platform. It's not exactly like the brand new thing on the in the world, like in social. And social kind of operates like nightclubs, right? Something comes out and it's really popular and cool because it's a new thing, and then it becomes boring and old, and people lose interest and they move on to something else. right? I mean, we saw the same thing with other parts of social. We're going from Friendster to MySpace to Facebook to Instagram and now on to TikTok. And I think the same thing ultimately. I know I agree with you. There's going to be some people out there who are like, "Hey, I can fix this. I'm,
Yep.
arrogant person who has all the answers." But
Yep.
I think ultimately it's going to be something like, it's going to get split up into other platforms. Like I would say, like Discord, for example. I think has something really interesting going on, and then eventually replaced by some new kid on the block.
Yeah. Well, good prediction. Let's see where it goes. All right, moving on to our second and final topic for today, and it's a more positive and interesting one. I love this stuff. We're kind of seeing some new stuff happen in Hollywood. So, um, D, you had found this topic, and then I realized I had actually been following a similar storyline that kind of ties in. So it sounds like maybe multiple people are doing this. But you were saying the first NFT movie coming from Kevin Smith and Secret Networks Legend DAO. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's how it's pronounced. I'm
Legend
not
DAO.
familiar with Secret Network or Legend DAO.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think everybody's familiar with Kevin Smith. So I saw this get posted on a forum, and I thought, okay, well, it's another funky NFT implementation. So basically, what's happening is that Kevin Smith is producing a movie. It's called Kilroy Was Here,
Okay.
um, and so he's producing and directing. And then once the movie is released, it's going to be released through as an NFT. So anybody who purchases the movie is going to have an NFT associated with it. You're going to have to own the NFT in order to watch the movie. Um, Now, what is, I think, uh, I've been very critical of a lot of NFT, pretty much every NFT implementation that's come up in the news. Um, but I actually think this one's a step in the right direction. And the reason why I think it's a step in the right direction is you can actually do something with this. It's not just, a JPEG of an ape that sits on your crypto wallet or something. It actually assigns some limited IP rights. So according to Kevin Smith's statement, you can actually generate new content with it. You can create shorts. You can do re-edits. You can sub-license it. He says put it on a lunchbox. And then what he is planning to do is to take a bunch of that content, whether it's live action or animated shorts or other materials, like potentially, like, I don't know, maybe comics or something. And he's producing a sequel that will be kind of an anthology that will use those together. So it's almost like this kind of social experiment in which um, Kevin Smith, through these NFTs, is giving people permission to mess around with his IP and then kind of come together to reshare it. So that, I think, is really interesting, and it's not just a digital receipt for your purchase.
No, it's kind of innovative because I was thinking the minute you said that, the first thing that popped into my mind was Etsy. So what happens on Etsy is people will go on there and they'll take stuff like, let's say, Super Mario Brothers and all that, and they'll start to build it into like lunch boxes and stuff. They don't have the rights to do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
after a period of time, eventually it gets, if they grow enough, I assume, they get pulled off or they get warned about it. And this happens all the time. So it's kind of interesting that like you would purchase this NFT, it's logged on the blockchain. It says that you own these certain rights to it, like you said, like making lunch boxes and stuff like that. And then you can enjoy whatever content he creates. You can be part of the community, and then you can use that token key to basically verify that you have the rights to reuse that IP. So you can go on Etsy and you can create things and you can sell them and you can do all that. And if there's any issues with it, then you just supply the token key and it shows basically that you were one of the people who actually purchased limited rights or full rights or whatever it is to the
Yeah.
IP. So it's basically, let's take it back for a second. It's actually kind of like a legal document, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really complicated to like issue legal documents to everyone who like buys a ticket to your movie or something. But this makes it really easy because it puts it on a public ledger that can be checked through either a verification system or an individual. So I like kind of the direction this stuff is going. I feel like it's kind of neat. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg of the thinking and creativity around it. So there's actually two other people that I'd been following that are doing stuff related to this. The first one I ever saw was Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. They decided to produce something called Stoner Cats. And Stoner
Hmm.
Cats was a animated series that they produced, and basically you would either buy the NFT, I think it is, or you would pay with crypto, and then you'd get certain rights to watching the show, behind the scenes stuff, other perks, that kind of stuff, to be part of the Stoner Cats community. So they started doing this basically in 2020. They
Yeah.
started producing it and pulling it together. I don't know where the current state is of that one right now, but the one that I've been tracking pretty closely is Doug Ellen, who was the writer and creator for the show Entourage. And so he decided to bring together a cast of older actors. So that included Entourage people, Kevin Connolly, Kevin Dillon, and then Breezy, and there like a whole list of individuals. And he did a show called Ramble On, and they shot the pilot for it already. Then Mark
Uh-huh.
Cuban was on Ramble On and became friends with them because they brought him in for an interview to kind of talk about NFTs and talk about film and things that were going on. And Mark Cuban said, "Hey, why don't you do an NFT so people buy the NFTs in order to see or watch Ramble On, and then they get access to certain things." So now they're creating. It looks like it's. I don't think it's completely stamped and signed and sealed yet, but like giving fans access to that content as well as other rights via an NFT and have that on the blockchain as well. And then Mark Cuban is kind of facilitating it through his company through Fireside Chat. So there's some stuff going on in Hollywood. There's some
Yeah.
innovation. And one of the things that Doug Ellen mentioned was that a lot of really respected directors, writers, and stuff like that are just totally and utterly fed up with Hollywood. They're tired of the fact that now everything is just about Marvel movies and things like that. Independent films can't really get out as much. And he was saying that so people started shooting them themselves and then producing them themselves. And he said, this is just another tool to help think through how to market, how to get your stuff out into the world without having to go through a studio.
Well, there's a lot to respond to there. But what I'm curious about is for some of these other projects like Ramble On,
Yeah.
are they actually doing what Kevin Smith is doing, where it actually confers rights for them to use the IP to create their own content?
So right now, as far as I heard, as of like last week, I was listening to the podcast about it. They are just in they're in like the creative mode, innovation mode of this with Mark Cuban. So they just wrapped the pilot, and they were shopping the pilot to different studios and Endeavor Content, which is part of the Endeavor network, with Rama, not Rama Manuel, uh,
Ari Emanuel.
Ari Emanuel, his brother, yeah. Um, and kind of like going through that space and then working with Mark on figuring out how to do some stuff with NFTs so people can buy NFTs and have access. So they said they haven't fully got their stuff fleshed
Yeah.
out, where Kevin Smith has already finished his.
So here's how people are going to respond. If they're just selling NFTs in order to access and watch the movie,
Uh huh.
it's just not going to work, right? I mean, nobody wants that. You're providing no value add to users or viewers in this case. In order to own an NFT just to watch the content. Like the thing that's interesting, I think, for Kevin Smith, and I hope everybody else catches on, is that it gives access to use the IP in ways that just more than just consuming the content.
Yeah, that's like next level right there. Like that's very,
Yeah.
very innovative and kind of throws a wrench into the traditional IP system of Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think is interesting if people can catch on and kind of wrap their head around this is you imagine there is a limitation on public showing of a film, right?
Oh yeah, that's
You
right.
can't just invite 20 people over into or 100 people over into your backyard and show a movie because of the rights restrictions. But with the way that Kevin Smith is approaching it, you could. And what that could mean is the proliferation of of movie theaters. Like you could have a lot more just small startup movie theaters that are outside of the duopoly or triopoly of movie theater chains that are now kind of shrinking because their business model's a little funky.
So let me play this out. So let's say you and I do something. Okay, we decide that we're going to buy a parking lot. Okay,
Hmm.
you and me. We should do this. This would be super fun. We buy a parking lot and we start driving movies again. But what you and I do is we start buying these NFTs for these movie releases and start showing these and charging tickets for people to come in and watch and get popcorn and kind of
Hmm.
experience everything. Would that be something where that would be legal? Is that what you're saying? You think it might be?
I mean, it would be legal now, except the studios stop you from doing it
Yeah, that's what I
because
mean.
they
Yeah.
want to lock down on the IP. So that you have to go through this whole negotiation process, and they want to. I think a lot of times they want to see that you're a certain size and all these kinds of things. So doing all kinds of things in order to limit movie theater kind of competition because
Okay.
it's in the best interest of AMC and Cinemark and those kinds of
Oh
companies.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
So with this, then they could do that. So a couple caveats to all of this. Number one, Kevin Smith is famously non-litigious with people using his content. He
Correct.
has over and over again said, "Hey, I use other people's stuff all the time in order to make my career happen, and I want other people to have access to things in order for them to be creative and for them to live their dream." You know, good guy Kevin Smith. On the other thing is, oh, technically, you don't really need NFTs to make any of this happen.
I know.
Um,
So this is the weird thing about it, right? It's quote unquote neat, meaning it's neat that you go on the blockchain and you can see that D's
yeah,
name is there and he owns the rights to this IP and it's good. It's very organized. It's easy to access. There's no complaints. There's no paper, but
yeah,
it's technically neat. It's not required.
yeah. I mean, basically, this is what goes on like Getty Images or Shutterstock or something like that, where you go and you pay and you get your access to your to the artwork, the photography, and then you can use it how you want. I think there's a little bit more limitations as far as like you can't necessarily sub license it and put it on certain things like Kevin Smith is allowing you to do. But you don't need NFTs to do that. It's almost as though NFTs as a platform is giving them the excuse in order to shake up how IP is done when it comes to movies. And I think the shake up to the IP is kind of worth everything that's going on here because, and I've said this before, everybody's just way too paranoid about squeezing every last dollar out of their IP.
Yeah.
And it would be better for everyone, I think, including those companies who are trying to monetize it, if they just loosened things up and got more exposure and got more groundswell for a lot of the content that's coming out.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point because I was thinking that I like the idea of this being done just to stress test the technology. Like even if
Sure.
it's just for that, like just to kind of see what happens and what kind of unfolds from this and how you get pushback from the studios themselves. Because I remember when 3D printing came out, there was a guy in Texas, if I recall, or something, who 3D printed something that was owned by another company, but he basically had taken that picture, turned it into a 3D printer. So he did the work to create the 3D model, then he printed the model, and then basically, technically, it looks like that character. So he would be stealing that character. So he sued himself
Mm-hmm.
in court just to see what would happen in court and how that outcome would change IP law, right? And this is kind of like the same thing. IP law will fundamentally shift and change from this. As a matter of fact, we should ask Phil because one of the podcasts we did on season 1 or season 2 was with Phil Wagner. He's like an
Mm-hmm.
amazing IP agent that handles a lot of Silicon Valley clients and stuff like that. And we had done an interview with him where he talked about like how it all works and that kind of stuff. And I would love to circle back with him and say, hey, look, I don't know if you've been tracking this, but here's kind of what's happening. How do you see this? What are you seeing
Yeah.
from the actual like patent and trademark office regarding the use of IP in this way?
Well, I think that the main change needs to happen in the hearts and minds of the people who own the IP, and then there also needs to be a change in how IP is handled from the government side. Because right now there is a requirement that you actually defend your IP, otherwise you surrender control to it, which is just I think is ultimately ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just because you allow other people to to use your IP doesn't mean that shouldn't be able to stop other people using your IP in other ways. So that I think absolutely needs to change from a governmental standpoint. I think video games is a great example of this
Uh huh.
because a while back, one of the things that started happening was people started making YouTube videos about video games.
Yep.
So that is that studio and that publisher's IP. So if somebody's making a Call of Duty video or a Counter Strike video, where a lot of this kind of started, or Minecraft, then the those companies, Activision or Blizzard or Mojang, was kind of legally incentivized to shut that down, to say like, no, you don't have the rights to that. I can't let you use it, because then the U.S. government is going to say that I don't own the IP anymore, or maybe I'm just super controlling and I don't want anybody to have access to my IP. What the video game industry ultimately found out is that by finding a way, and they did, in order to grant some limited IP access for those gamers, their game sales improved, because those YouTubers and now Twitch streamers are promoting their content. This has become part of the purchase process, and also a major motivation for people to buy certain games, because it is the game that is trending on Twitch. So that if they want to be a Twitch streamer, this is the game that they want to play in order to get views.
Yeah, it's marketing, dude. It's like
Right?
great marketing. You have someone basically showing your game all day long, playing it, enjoying it, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, challenging it, whatever it is, and you're getting people excited about it, and then they go out and buy the game. Like, to
And I
me, it's
think
nothing but marketing.
that's ultimately the same thing that can happen with movies and plenty of other IP, where it's like, hey, let people write their fan fiction and distribute it. Like, the more that people can see all the stuff that's out there without being shut down because of IP, overzealous IP control, the more the movie is going to be kind of in the zeitgeist, and more people are going to pay attention to it, and you're probably going to be able to monetize it in a variety of ways, not just theater showings,
Yeah.
streaming and merchandise and all kinds of other different
Well, I
ways.
mean, there's concern and worry, and we've talked about this in many other podcasts. But like the the movie industry used to be like, if you wanted to see a movie, you had to go to the movie theater, and there was no other place to really do it. And
Yeah,
now it's like you have your phone, you have a 110-inch screen at home with a subwoofer, and you have all these other options. And so you have to distribute it in different ways. You have to distribute it in ways that allows people to kind of go to the medium that they choose in
yeah,
order to basically consume your content. And in between all of that spider web of figuring that stuff out are contracts, contracts, and contracts. And
yeah,
so if you can produce something and then all the rights are owned by you, then people who purchase the NFT suddenly start to gain rights to it. You can essentially turn back and say, hey, if a studio wants to wants to distribute my film that I produced, they can simply buy the NFT of it and distribute it, and we can make a
yeah.
deal, right? There's like so many ways to cut it, but I feel like this is slightly putting the power back into the creator, and
Hmm.
allowing them to have a little bit more flexibility on how they manage their own content, because creators want to create. Creators don't want to sit around and talk to lawyers all day long. Like, this
Yeah,
is the wrong business for that, right? So if you can streamline this and make it more effective, hey, we're on the right track. And actually, we have a special guest coming in. I don't know when he's going to come in. We're working on a schedule. He's super awesome guest who is in the film industry and has a lot of experience. And I think you and I, D, should bring this topic up and ask his opinion about that, and also what maybe with their company they're doing in order to work in this space as well.
yep. I think that will be fascinating, and this obviously has turned into another IP rant on our end, because I think that the way that things work right now is really constraining what is possible in this space.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, hey, I think this was great for today. These are two good topics. I know we had a little bit of limited time also, so we wanted to kind of just pick two that we thought our listeners would absolutely love. So thanks for hopping on early, D, and doing this. And sorry for the mistake yesterday of my microphone not recording. But anyways, thanks everyone so much for listening today. Really appreciate it. We'll be posting the links to if any sources we referenced on Twitter, and you can find us and follow us at Twitter at the X Podcast One. That's the X Podcast and the number one. If you like this podcast, found it interesting or informative, helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you use. Also, if you send a message to Twitter or you send it to our email, we will read it. So if there's a topic you want us to discuss or research or dig into, just let us know and we will be there. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And you have a great rest of your week.